You may have heard of VS Code before. You may have seen it in action. You may have always wanted to try it, but you've just never got round to doing it. Well then, let's just say this video is a sign. You need to switch to VS Code as your main IDE, the place in where you do all of your coding, whatever language it may be. Hi friends, it's James, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a full tutorial on how to set up and use VS Code. This video is designed for beginners, people who have never used VS Code before. However, if you're a fluent user of VS Code, well then check the timestamps in the description, as I might surprise you with a few tips and tricks that you have never known before. So I'm not going to be going into detail about the reasoning about why you should use VS Code. Just know this, you need to be using it. So then, I hope you find this interesting, and let's get started. Well then, the first thing of course that we need to be doing is to actually install VS Code. Well it's really easy to do this. All we do is head to the Visual Studio Code website. I'll leave a link for this in the description. Once you come to their page, it will literally look like this. If you're viewing this video in like a year's time, maybe their page will be slightly different, but it will be easy for you to understand what to do. And all you want to do is just come ahead and click download for Windows stable build. Once you do that, it will redirect you to this, and a pop-up, depending on which browser you'll use, will say to save the file and to run it. So just go ahead and click save and run it and follow the steps through to install VS Code on your PC or laptop or Mac. Lots of computers I had to list just there. Great, so you've just installed VS Code and you've opened it up. And when you do so, it will look like this. Well, mine's slightly different. For example, these are recent projects that I've been working on. So you most likely, if this is the first time you're opening up VS Code, first time you've installed it, you won't have any recent ones here. So then, how do we actually create a file? How do we actually start coding using Visual Studio Code? Well then, so it's pretty easy. What we want to do is open or create a new file. So as this is your first time using it, we're going to create a new file. So we're going to come out to File up here, and we're going to go ahead and click Open Folder. We're going to click it, and a file window will open up here. You want to navigate to a place in where you want to store your code, where you want your programming code to be located on your computer. So I've navigated to the directory, the location on my computer where I want the code to be stored, the code that we're going to be writing in VS Code. So as I'm in this folder here that I want this code to be located, what we're going to do here is we're just going to come down and click Select Folder. Once we do this, give it a second, VS Code will load. And so, if we look at the side of VS Code here, this tab here that is selected, this is our File Explorer inside of VS Code. And as you can see here, we've opened up the YouTube tutorial folder. And that was the folder that I chose just a second ago on that File Explorer in where I wanted to store the code. And right, so we've opened it up here now, but it's blank because that folder was empty and we haven't got any files in it. So let's go ahead and create one. And also this applies for any language, any programming language that you're doing. But just for the example of this video, I'm going to do Python. So there's multiple ways in we can create a file. A way I like to do it is just by coming here while hovering and clicking here and this file icon, the one with a plus next to it. If we click it, it's going to pop up here for us to enter a name of a file. So let's just go main.py because py is the extension of Python. And look at that, it's now opened up a place in which we can write code. See, basically we've now got a lovely place in which we can write code. And so just to reiterate, this area on the side here is where all of your code for a project will be located. So let's say, for example, inside of our overall project, we've got our Python file here. But I want to create a folder to store, I don't know, extra Python files, for example. We can come here and click this icon next to file 1. This will create a folder. And let's just call it audio files, just for example, like that. And now we have got a folder inside of our main folder. And we could, for example, we could drag our main file into that folder. So look, that file is our main file that we just created. It's inside of the audio files folder, which is inside of our main folder, YouTube tutorial. I hope that makes sense. That is how we use the File Explorer with VS Code. Okay, so moving on. So let's say you've written a nice long program, in, let's say, Python. or any language that you choose, and you want to go ahead and run it, and you want to run it via the terminal. Well then, how would you do this? Do you have to open up CMD on your computer, like by going Control R, typing CMD, etc.? Well, no, you don't. What you can do is use the built-in terminal into VS Code. So let me show you how you can access this. At the top here, we'll have one called Terminal. If we click it, we can then want to go ahead and click New Terminal. And look at this, it's opened up a terminal at the bottom of our VS Code window. And look at this as well, it's actually opened it into that folder that we're in, that folder that we're writing all of our files into, YouTube tutorial, or whatever it is in your case. So let's say I want to go ahead and run this very complex file that I've written, print hello world. Let's go ahead and do that. What we will have to do is just as if you were going to do it into your CMD into Windows or your terminal into Mac. Just exactly how you would do it, but it's just now built into VS Code. So Python 3 main.py. And look, it works. It outputs the response. Exactly what we want to do. And that's how you use the terminal. And well, what I've just gone over is the very basics of using VS Code. The very basics of just how you can write your code into it and how you can run it. However, let's get into a bit more fun and complex things. But now, let's move on to something that VS Code is known worldwide for. And that is extensions. And as you can see here, look, I've got so many different extensions installed that all do different tasks, but are all vital in my programming that I do. Well, you can literally search for any extension you want. So let's say you're doing something in Python. You can search for the Python and you can see most popular ones. For example, this one here, I would highly recommend this one if you're into Python development. It's made by Microsoft and it's one of the best out there. However, you may be wondering what actually is an extension used for? Well then, so extensions can do many different things. For example, it can set up an environment for programming. If you don't know what an environment is, well, think of it as like a container, as in like a place where you can only run code. Your code can't access anything outside of that container. Like a bucket of water, the water can't get outside of the bucket, it's all contained inside the bucket. Hope that makes sense. But that's just one tiny example of what an extension can do. It can also do stuff like autocomplete, which is a massive thing, which is an unbelievably great thing. So let's say, for example, let's create an HTML file, right? And so I've got an extension installed for HTML that does auto-completion as well as other things. So let me show you what this extension can do. Let's say I start typing like body. See how it's popped up with a thing. If I click tab, it will auto-complete these tags, which is just an amazing thing that you want to do, which will speeds up your workflow dramatically. And honestly, this is one of the main reasons in why I use VS Code. I know other IDEs, other places that you can program do this, however VS Code does it the best and I absolutely love it. So install some extensions that do that. If you want me to go over a detailed guide of what extensions you should be using, then let me know in the comments and I'll happily make a video on that. But I won't go into any more detail about extensions now, apart from just to reiterate, they're just an amazing thing that you should be using. But it has so many different functionalities and features that you just have to be using when programming. And if you're not, well, you're just wasting so much time. Like the auto-completion, that honestly will save you hours. So I hope you can see how important and useful extensions are. I now want to just quickly go over what these other icons do in your sidebar. Well, the first one is search and replace, and this is a powerful feature in VS Code. And let me explain what it does. But let's just say for the purpose of this example, we have over 1,000 different files with let's say each file contains at least 100 lines of code. That's the example we have now. So this search and replace it, let's just say we want to replace the hello world with chicken, for example. And we don't know where this hello world is in this file because we have thousands of files with hundreds of lines in all of them. So what we could do is if we type in what we want to find, hello world, and look, as we start to type it, it pops up here with the files in which it's founded. And as well, I don't have thousands of files here, as you can see. If you did, whichever file this appears in, it will appear in this list here. And now, what does this replace to? So we want to replace it with chicken. So let's type it in. Okay, so as you can see here, it's crossed out hello world and replaced it with chicken. And so now we want to replace it with chicken. So if we come down here, we can click on this icon here, replace all, and we'll go for all of our different files and replace the world hello world with chicken. And this is a pretty cool thing you can do with VS Code. And trust me, you might not think now that it's got any use. However, when you're doing big projects, this is a lifesaver. And well, the next one we have is a debugger. And basically, it just helps you very easily find errors in your code, etc. But it's basically just an easier way to find problems with your code. Next one is Git. And well, if you see my previous video about why you should use Git in programming, you'll understand why Git is so important. And well, if this repository, this code, this folder is linked to a GitHub repository, then this here would give us options to be able to push our code to that repository. I'm not going to go into details in this video about how to set this up. If you want to know how, I'll most likely be doing another video on going into much more detail about how to set Git up on your computer. So if you want to see about that, let me know in the comments. And the last one here is extensions. And you may be wondering, why do I have these extra 4 ones here? Well, these are all from different extensions. So this one here is one for helping me design Alexa skills. The next one here is for GitLens, another thing to do with Git, an extension to Git. Next one's to do with GitLab, another extension for Git. And the last one is Slack, like a messaging sort of app, like WhatsApp, but for like businesses, if that makes sense. And the last four are all extension based. Again, going back to my point about how important extensions are. And the last sort of point I want to bring up about VS Code for this beginner's tutorial is keyboard shortcuts and some important key ones. Because I won't be able to cover all shortcuts in this section of the video, because trust me, there are hundreds of shortcuts. I'm just going to go over the key main ones that I think. And the first one is the ability to move lines up and down. And let me show you what I mean. If on my keyboard I hit the Alt key, and then I use the arrow keys, if I hit the up arrow key, my line will move up like this. And I can move it all throughout the file. And honestly, this is an utter lifesaver, trust me. I cannot express my feelings about how many times this has saved me. It's just one you need to get used to. And it saves so much time. Another sort of shortcut that I like is the ability to have multiple cursors. And let me iterate on what I mean by this. If I hold the Alt key, and I click on other places. Look here, you can see I've now got a massive cursor. And watch it, I can type hello, and look at that. It's typed it on multiple lines like this. And all I did was I just held the Alt key down and selected where I want that extra cursor to go. And trust me, it doesn't seem that useful now, but when you have, like, for example, loads of if statements, this can be really useful. And those, to be fair, are some of my 2 favourite shortcuts that I like. There are others that I use, quite a few others, like some basic ones just like Control-C, where you copy some text, Control-V, but also other ones like shifting text between different files, locating text throughout a file. And well, I found this worksheet, this document, this poster in a sense, made by VS Code that has basically all of these different shortcuts available. And these aren't all the shortcuts, there are still way more on top of these. But yeah, I'll leave a link for this in the description, so you can check it out for yourself to see other shortcuts that you might like the look of. Well, that now brings us to the end of this quick start, this getting used to VS Code video. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you've learned something. And I really hope now that you start using VS Code when you are programming. And well, if you found this video useful, please do consider giving it a like. And well, while you're down there, why not consider subscribing? It's free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya!